everyone. It's Judith Bowtell. Welcome to another episode of Aligned and Thriving. Today we've got a wonderful guest with us who's coming to us from Singapore. So once again, we're on the international stage. So I'd like to welcome Aneace Haddad. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Judith. Wonderful being here.
Lovely. So let's find out a bit about Aneace. So Aneace helps seasoned executives evolve naturally into high-performing C-suite teams by leveraging their emerging insights into the cognitive, emotional, and resilience advantages of midlife. Now, how could you say no to not listening to somebody who does that kind of work, who works with people in an evolving and natural way and builds on the developments of midlife? We're going to learn a lot this episode. And for Aneace, this stage of midlife represents the last uncharted territory in adult development, offering unique opportunities for professional growth and leadership transformation. Traditional leadership programs frequently overlook midlife, missing the unique opportunities it presents for profound personal and professional growth. My approach is designed to leverage the wisdom, resilience, and neuroplastic advancements characteristic of this life stage. That's a quote from Aneace. So by addressing the specific changes, both physiological and neurological, that occur during midlife, he facilitates the development of leadership teams that are not only effective, but are also marked by humility, resolve, and adaptability. This enables the natural emergence of the team's collective best self, fostering high-performance teams and leadership excellence. So this is the person we're going to be listening to today and finding out more about this journey into midlife and how you can harness what's happening naturally and really benefit from that form of leadership in your organisation, and especially for the people who are working for leaders who are very grounded and know themselves. I'm sure that is a huge benefit for many people. So whether you're in a leadership role or you're interested in leadership in the future, I think a lot of people get a lot out of this discussion. I know I will. Aneace, welcome again. What have you done lately for your work-life balance?
What have I done lately for work-life balance? I make sure I go to the gym 3 times a week. I've changed my gym routine to have more cardio mixed in with weights. But I've been doing that for a long time. I think lately what I've done for work-life balance is to stop berating myself for sitting around on a weekday afternoon when I'm in between meetings and just doing nothing. Whereas I think up until recently, it's no, you got to fill in the time. So I think it's giving permission for that to happen, which is quite a new thing.
Oh, that's definitely...
Still feel guilty about it, but...
That's a work in progress, dealing with the guilt. I had a fantastic meme on Facebook with the group that I meet. It was a lot about self-kindness and developing new ways of talking to yourself that are less about that berating and developing a more supportive relationship with yourself and such. And one of the things is, imagine if you talk to yourself not like a best friend or not a child, but what if you talk to yourself like you talk to your pets? Or if you have a dog, and everyone here knows I'm a mad dog lover. Imagine if when you took that break, you would have told yourself, oh, good boy. There's a good boy having a stretch. There's a good boy having a lie down and a nap. Oh, good boy, good boy. Let's take some time out on the couch, or let's go outside and just wander around the garden. Whatever it is, it's good boy. He's a good dog. And so we've been practicing it like little phrase. We added little phrases to this chat each morning, and there's a few of us in there going, oh, good girl, good girl. Who had a good sleep last night? Who had a big sleep? Oh, yes, you did. Yes, you did. And it's just really sweet way of just affirming yourself, but in a very fun and non-serious way. Yeah. So I'll give you that one.
I love that. I actually saw that the first time with my mother-in-law. She's in Australia. She's Australian. She's run a dance studio until her 80s. So she's always been into dancing, very physically active. And then when she had a fall a few years ago and needed some time to recover, and I would hear her say that while she's practicing something, she'd say, good girl, Janet. Good job, Janet.
Oh, good on her.
Yeah, that was quite good. I'd never heard that before. It was like, that's a pretty cool habit to have.
Yeah.
And I started noticing every once in a while my wife will do it as well.
Ah,
So it's a pretty good habit. Thanks for reminding me of that.
that is a good habit. Yeah, personal trainers sometimes do that too. Yeah, you got it. You got it. You know, two more in you.
Yeah.
I really don't. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I do. Yeah, when you've got to exert yourself a bit more as well.
Good job.
Yeah, good job. So you can get into those different energies of good supportive self-taught instead of the stuff we sometimes inherit, which is, oh, should have got up. You should have finished that task quicker, or you should have done that, or you should be using this time where in between meetings, you often just don't have the focus that you just need time out. We need time out. All right. So I'm going to get into your background a bit now, but let's start right back in the womb. No, not that far. But let's start with what you learned about work and the values of work, or what drives and motivates you about work from your childhood. What did you see around you and learn there?
So I grew up as a third culture kid. Have you heard that term before? Third culture kids?
No, tell me that one.
So third culture kids are people whose parents come from a different culture than the one that they're living in now.
Yeah.
So the kids are bridging cultures and adapting to the new culture. So they create their own culture. Quite often, these are also from mixed nationality parents.
Yeah.
So my father's from Iraq. My mother's American. Her side of the family came from Scotland a couple hundred years ago to the U.S. My father's side is all in Turkey and Persia, Iran, Iraq. And by the time I was born in Austin, Texas, but by the time I was 21, I had lived half my life overseas and already spoke French fluently.
Right.
So I've lived since childhood in a very mixed international world, which was very strange back then, but today has become extremely normal.
Yes.
So all of my work life is in that environment. I coach people from all over the world. Many of them are married with people from other parts of the world, and their kids are growing up in Singapore, for example, and their friends are also all mixed.
Yeah.
I live very much in that world.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So that ability to translate across different cultures, to be a facilitator as well, that really must support you in the work you do now.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. There's an aspect of what you just shared on being able to relate to people of many different cultures and not see them as much through the lens of culture, or noticing the lens of culture and knowing that is not what defines the person. That goes to a metaphor of a fish unaware of the water that it swims in. And I find that people that have lived in multiple cultures and interact with multiple cultures are far more aware of the water that they themselves swim in. So you can distinguish more easily between your true authentic, who you are, and who you are being because that's your upbringing. It's a complex interplay. It's quite powerful.
Let's take a quick break.
Don't miss a single episode, so subscribe to Aligned and Thriving now to unlock a world of inspiration and practical strategies. And if you have subscribed, why not check out our IG account or join our community to navigate your own way to a happier and healthier working life.
Yeah, I think in Australia, we have a strong local culture, but we also have in the major cities where most of us live, they're very multicultural cities as well. And so I think my generation, at least, that Gen X generation, were aware that there were a lot of the immigrant communities around us, and our friends were often, as you say, these third culture kids, or they themselves had immigrated, or their parents, or they had been born here, but looking different to the white kids around them. And so I think we've been able to navigate that. And then a lot of us travelled as well or worked overseas too. So I don't think we believe we are as dominant in our culture as the US is. And we've also watched a lot of US and UK content. So that's where most of our audio, film, television, etc., music comes from. And so I think that's quite interesting how the distinction perhaps some of your US clients would have with our if you're working with Australian clients.
You've also gifted to America some of its best actors and actresses.
Oh, they've got to go somewhere. We can't afford them. We can't keep them in the style of the life they've become accustomed to. But yeah, some of them come back and bring the work with them, and more power to them.
Yeah, they do. And they buy big houses and stuff on the beach.
Oh, yes. So there's a whole debate going on for Byron Bay at the moment where the Hemsworths and such live. And the locals are going, because Byron Bay is this little hippie town that's just been converted into, as I said, West Hollywood. And we don't want to be that. But it's also they bring a lot of money into the area. Yeah, I think Byron Bay is quite different to when I used to go up in the 90s. It's still beautiful. The beaches you can't ruin. The beaches are still beautiful, but the towns do change. Yeah, so you had this upbringing. So you lived overseas, you became multilingual. And then, so your first stage of work was obviously not in leadership coaching. What were you doing before that?
Yeah. So half my career, 25 years was in technology. I started out as a programmer and then quickly became a tech entrepreneur. I built a payment software company in the south of France in the early 90s, grew it to 30 countries, sold it in 2007 when I was 47. And went through, now with hindsight, I can see what I was going through at the time. At the time, I didn't know what I was going through, but went through a very profound transformation that led to my becoming an executive coach at 50. I discovered, in a nutshell, I liked people more than I liked computers. But it was a difficult, painful process to go through. And now I can see that in people in their 40s. I can see where that's beginning to come in, so I can give them some context for how our brains are changing, how our bodies are changing. Kids are growing up and leaving home and all that. We're starting to wonder, is this really what I wanted? Is this what I've been working all my life toward? So we become more introspective. There's a lot that goes on in that period that can be scary. And at the same time, I find extremely transformative and exciting and passionate.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I've got a friend who works mostly with managers, probably just below C-suite, but in the finance sector. And she says she deals with anxiety. And she says, but most of the guys she works with are really focused on what legacy are we going to leave? What am I leaving? What am I teaching my children? They've become so much more interested. Like that's become their driving motivation. I guess because what can you do in the finance sector? It's got such a multi-faceted base. Yeah.
And legacy then almost always has to do with people.
Yes.
Not so much what is the institution. If they're looking at it as an institution basis, it's the people part of the institution. It's not the mechanics. They know the mechanics are going to disappear and change over the next years.
Yes.
But so that goes to what I found is that transition, once they're there, it becomes really clear and all that. It's that transitioning where people are going, what's got me here is my technical abilities, my finance abilities, functional ability, all these kinds of things, the knowledge that I have, my expertise, I get stuff done. That's what got me here.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, there's a change in the 40s where these desires are shifting. And if we hold on to that past, we become brittle.
Yeah.
So there's a letting go process that can be quite difficult, finding new value in other things that I didn't see before.
Yeah. So what is actually going on physiologically, neurologically for people at that time? What are the things to look out for maybe for people who might be experiencing this change and going, what the hell's going on?
Yeah. So I look at that through the lens of our personal and professional leadership. So I'm not looking at it from a medical perspective of examining midlife. So I'm looking at it really from the lens of how does this impact the way we get around in the world?
Yeah.
And I've identified what I call 3 winds of change that really rage during midlife. The first wind of change is physiological. Our bodies are changing. Our stamina is going down. There's menopause for women, andropause for men. Health things start to creep up and we start to wonder what's going on. And We start to think about parents and grandparents and uncles and aunts and things like that that have gone through things at this age.
Yeah.
So all these things start to play up. At the same time, physiologically, we're realizing that we will most likely be living much longer than prior generations. And that starts to stretch our thinking about our own longevity in terms of when we don't think about it at 47, 48, we're thinking, okay, this is my last stint in the corporate world. I really got to make this one matter to get to that next level. And then once you start thinking about these changes, you start going, wow, I might have another 40 years to go. So so there's a lot more potential in front of me than I thought before. All of that is the physiological wind of change that creates a lot of introspection. I think that's the most common, that we see those quickly. And then there's the second one that changes, neurological. Our brains are changing. We forget where we put our car keys. We forget our child's name. We forget a cell on a spreadsheet when we're presenting to the board. And we think, oh my God, I don't remember what was behind that cell. I'm going to look stupid in a moment. I got to make something up right now on the spot.
Yeah.
That's the prefrontal cortex that's slowing down at midlife. And there are all kinds of, when you research that on the web, there are more and more books and tools and things to keep the prefrontal cortex functioning.
Yeah.
I'm not so excited about those. I'm much more excited about the more positive things that change in our brains at midlife. One of them is that the two hemispheres are communicating with each other more than in the past, which means that you're able to connect the dots. You're able to see patterns in ways that maybe were not as visible a few years earlier. I think that's a wonderful development that can be embraced, and that people are excited to embrace because it is powerful value. Another one that I find very intriguing is that our intellectual empathy goes down. So,
and what does that mean?
We have a little bit of more trouble understanding other people's thoughts and ideas, but our emotional empathy goes up. So we have intellectual is coming down, emotional empathy is going up. And then you get into situations where you're listening to someone and you go, I don't understand why you're thinking like that or saying that, but wow, I get you. Yeah. I really get you emotionally.
Yeah. That's really interesting because often I also run leadership programs and what have you, but often when I'm working with junior staff, they are looking for emerging managers. They're looking for that emotional empathy from their leaders and comment when they don't see it. But maybe it's also, they might be looking in the wrong place. Maybe they need to be looking for in the older people around them, if there are older people in their organization. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of times what I've seen is senior executives who see that shifting in themselves they can't talk about it to anyone. They're a bit ashamed and they feel like they'll blurt out to me something like, am I getting soft? What is this? I never used to be soft like this.
Yeah.
So then they start questioning their own judgment. And that's within that whole area of grasping to the past and thinking that I need to continue the way I've done in the past rather than flowing into a new way of being.
Yeah. Yeah. You come from the tech sector, and often that's seen as a young person's game. It's the tech bros and et cetera like that. So how do these cultures of organizations that are very driven by the young and up and coming and the new ideas and the innovation, how do people who are moving into this new stage of leadership, how do they adapt to these challenges in organizations? Without giving away all your magic, without giving away all your secrets again.
I think it's easier for slightly younger generations, not because they're younger, but I think they've been exposed to more variety of ideas. I have an extreme example of that I really love. Outside my stepson's elementary school years ago, we went for a parent-teacher thing, and I saw a poster in front of one of the other classrooms. And on the top of it was, who will I be at 100? And under it, the kids had written different stuff and put pictures. It's kid stuff. So people saying, I'm going to be a rock star. Someone else saying, I'll be dead. Somebody else saying something else. But it really hit me that their perception of life is that most likely they will live to 100 and be productive. Whereas what was unsaid when we were growing up was you retire at 65 and you die a few years later. So I think that slightly younger generation, they've been exposed to more of these things. It'll be easier for them to move into it, but they'll still have to go through the transition when that comes up in their 40s. So the third wind of change, we spoke about physiological and neurological. The third one is parental. And I'm going to generalize, but in a fair number of cases or above average number of cases, people at that level, at that stage, their kids are in their teens and they're growing up and about to leave home and go off to college or something like that. You go to the slightly higher aged people that tend to be board members, their kids are already young adults. And I noticed years ago a shift in leadership style that mirrors where we are in our parenting journey. So parents with younger children at home and teens often have a more KPI-driven mindset. You do this and this will happen. You don't do that and this other thing will happen. And it's easy to bring that same energy from home into work. And then as the kids grow up and you see that doesn't work anymore and you need to let go, that energy then comes in to work. It's that letting go and more empowering. So I love that. I love that particular wind of change because we all go through it. We all change our parenting identity, who we are as parents, as our kids grow up. And we discover new value where we might search. If my daughter isn't going to take my advice, and I have a lot of advice after so many years, if she's not going to take it and I'm not supposed to tell her what to do, what the hell is my value as a parent? And so we search and we find new value as parents. And I find that particular wind very poignant and also extremely powerful in creating leadership, what I call leadership superpowers.
So what's the support? What's the ideal environment for somebody who's developing these leadership superpowers? What do they need around them?
Oh, each person is going to be a different answer to that. I think if I were to generalize, I'd say you need some kind of support system of close friends that you can talk to that have gone through this or are going as well, so that this can be explored and normalized. You need someone to talk to. And sometimes executives at that age of our generation don't really have that. That's where coaching comes in as a very useful thing. Mentoring is very useful. Allowing yourself to explore when introspection is leading you down rabbit holes. Allowing yourself to explore that, going in that space, finding podcasts that interest you, blogs that interest you. I think that's really, meditation is huge. I think anybody who's not meditating at that age, that would be like one of the first things to do. Because that just helps tremendously in moving to this next level. Because that is a letting go process, meditation. It's ability to be with what is and acceptance. Acceptance, exactly. And you can laugh at things more easily. We're all human. We do stupid things and then we laugh.
It's interesting that pathway in leadership can sometimes become isolating. I say to people who are in a CEO role, senior management role, why a coach is valuable is because they're just things you can't talk to your team, you can't talk to your board, you can't talk to you can talk to your partner or spouse, but they're going to get sick of you after a while. There's only so many times, even the most loving relationship, there's only so many times if you're around the same conversation. And your friends are just going to tell you wonderful. That's the joy. Or after a while, we'll do something about it. Very close friends after a while will tell you to do something about it. So that's where having somebody to really listen, give you the space to explore things by yourself, and then to provide some new ways of reframing things. So you can see that there is a positive change to losing your kid in the growth of other parts of your brain. What do you think the impact of this on workplaces as you have your leadership team possibly even going through this at the same time, or people going through quite an introspective process? How does an organisation make space for this if they don't want to lose that person, but they also need them to be performing?
Yeah. At the C-suite level, where all of my work is at, I find this to be an extremely valuable insight in organically and naturally transforming the C-suite team.
Yeah.
Because they tend to all be in that age bracket.
Yeah.
They're going through different aspects of it. Their team effectiveness scores usually start out not too great. There's some trust issues. There are silos at the top.
Right.
Even if they're getting great results, there are accountability issues in that people tend to be accountable for their function or their business unit, and they're not really thinking in terms of overall, except for the CEO, CFO. They will be looking at the overall. And so there is lots of opportunities to increase the effectiveness of the team through greater collaboration, greater ownership of overall results, alignment, and all of these things. When you're coming at it through the angle that the whole group is going through these midlife transformations, you can leverage that for the introspection to really work deeper. So I find that the transformations just feel more natural and organic, and it's almost like the best self, the team's best self, collective self is emerging naturally because we're leveraging these changes.
Right. So it's having a CEO who's open to this and has this awareness and supports it in their colleagues. Do you think this is also...
It starts with the CEO and the colleagues wanting to perform more effectively as a team. That's really the starting point. They sense that there's something off.
Yeah.
They sense that there's friction that's preventing them from really getting the big goals that they want.
Yeah.
And that's usually where it starts from.
Yeah.
So they want to work on the team and have it improve.
Yeah. I think there's also, I see a movement sometimes in CEOs that they recognize that their jobs are too big. If they try and control everything, they just can't. It's a physical impossibility and a psychological impossibility. So they're feeling potentially burnt out. And often their jobs are too big. So they need to learn how to empower their colleagues, to empower their C-suite or their senior management team, if you're not that big. Yeah, to take on more ownership. So it's interesting that this can happen through, I guess, a communal sort of letting go of that control, that parenting style, to allow for a more adult basis of adult relationships in the workplace. Yeah.
Yes. And then that trickles down.
Yes. It's a cultural shift then. Yeah, about ownership and accountability as well. Yeah. I do a lot of work in government, very hierarchical structures, and sometimes for various reasons they exist, but it also hampers innovation as well. I think most people work in government would say that is what suffers. So I guess, how does this transition, what sort of messages would you want people to take to their workplaces to support that sort of transition? If you were speaking to a group of secretaries in Canberra at our capital, a head of government, what would you be saying to them to inspire them to allow this change?
I'm assuming government is not too different in this perspective on this topic from the rest of people.
Oh, sorry.
I think that
it's a liberal democracy. It's a big bureaucracy, elected representatives, and you've got a big bureaucracy of professional public servants who have probably been public servants for quite a while. There's very few at this very senior level come from outside. They've developed their skills in this culture of hierarchy and are very practiced at navigating it. I come from government. I was very practiced at navigating hierarchy. And so then when I went into organisations that had no hierarchy, I was like, how do you get anything done? So, how do you encourage that sort of letting go of centralized power, of hierarchical systems?
It always goes back for me to the desire to be more effective, either as an individual or as a team.
Yeah.
The desire or the goal isn't the letting go. The letting go is a means to the end of being more effective.
Yeah.
So if somebody has that desire to be more effective and they're in that age range, there's a very high likelihood that there's something to let go of in the past. There are expertise and knowledge and experience that's been built up in the past that maybe have less value today than they might have had in the past. And there are younger people that can do many of those things. So there's a process of leaning into what is the new value that I have that only I have and that my teams don't have. I can't keep doing the work for them because that's making me ineffective and I'm not empowering them. So I need to discover what is the new value that I bring that I didn't have before.
Yeah. I had a client, and he was a graphic designer by trade. And he said, I just can't do that anymore. I don't have the skills and he'd been in a management role so he'd been off the tools as it was. And he just said, I can't learn them. No, those days are gone. What can I add? And this was very much the conversation. I'd like to ask you a question because I've got some people hopefully coming up soon on the podcast who've taken sabbaticals. They've been in positions where they've been fortunate enough to take an adult gap year, for example, or they've just taken some time out. I feel like I want that women who, because of the gender wage gap here in Australia, that because we've been earning 15% or more less than men, we should get around menopause. It would be good if we got a good year off just to make up for that. Actually, calculations would be more like 3 years. But what do you think about this idea of sabbaticals, about time out, about giving yourself a good long recharge? Are you supportive of that, or do you think you should stay in connection?
Wow. I think generally it's quite a fantastic idea if someone has that opportunity and they're clear on what their sabbatical is about. I think that's a really fantastic thing. I don't often meet people that are in that situation that feel able to let go like that. So then most of the conversations become, how do you carve out time to step away in your current routine? Yeah. So I have a colleague here in Singapore, Fabrice Desmaresco, that I work with a lot. He's written a book called The Art of the Retreat. Yeah. And we do a lot of corporate work together. And the whole premise of his book is it's extremely important to carve out time so that your brain can slow down and relax. And when that happens, you're able to think more clearly. So it might not be going off and living in a monastery for a year or something. It might be just getting out of the office 10 minutes a day for a walk or something, a little bit of meditation. But the whole aspect, the whole idea of being able to carve out time away from the busyness, I think it's absolutely crucial and it becomes more vital.
I agree. I think sabbaticals are, very much a luxury and very much for the very privileged in society, and good luck to you. But it's also that ability to take time out of it, but know you're still connected even if you're not on your phone all the time. You can still stay connected to the work in the biggest, or the impact, or the intention, what you're trying to achieve. I think that's the key for taking time out. Yes, resting the brain, letting it have its recovery time, but so learning how to rest and recover, but also having some time for reflection at work. And in a busy, totally connected environment, I assume that's getting harder and harder for people to do without corporate retreats and stuff like that.
Yeah, it becomes very hard. There are tools that we help C-suite teams adopt that go in that direction, even in running their meetings, because I found that very often, so when you're in that busy mode, say you're having a meeting with the C-suite, the top team is meeting, people are speaking over each other, jumping in. You're trying to figure out, when do I share what I have to share? What if someone cuts me off? You've got cortisol running through your blood. And that prevents the brain from really functioning at its best. So even in a meeting, you're not doing a retreat, but you're in a meeting. How do you create an environment where the cortisol comes down? Each person shares fully. Each person expresses what they have to express. No interruption. And then it moves to the next person. So there are techniques that can create that. And people feel the impact immediately because the cortisol is out of their brain and their thoughts are just more clear and crisp.
Yeah. I talk about being in your safe zone, not in fear, not in flight fear. That's really a choice. You're either in a flight space or you're not. It's not. So yes, and when you're in fight flight with the cortisol's going, you can't think clearly. I totally agree. And so being able to support the leaders to be able to lead those create those spaces and lead those conversations and value that skill of being able to do that as much as the technical skills that you have. Yeah.
I love how in midlife, through introspection, people almost intuitively can begin to notice when cortisol is up. And then once you start noticing it in yourself, you can pick it up in the room. And then you know that you need to do something a little different now to bring that cortisol down in yourself and in everybody else around you. So that self-awareness becomes a lot easier to tap into at midlife than it was in our 20s and 30s.
And emotional intelligence, that social intelligence. Like, you've understood, you understand yourself. Now it's about really, you're okay, letting other people, making space for other people to find that okay as well. I think this is so important. I think this is really important to, I guess, for people who are navigating this time, and everyone will, hopefully. That's getting older is good. The alternative is not so good.
It's a privilege.
It's a privilege. So you're going to be becoming older. And yes, your technical skills are not going to be what they once were because things have moved on and such. But it's those soft skills, so-called soft skills or people skills, that interest in people growing, that interest in that. And I think that's such an amazing resource that organizations maybe should be starting to plan for as well in their career and succession planning, that it may not be a way of mentoring people in their 30s to understand this will be happening. It's natural, it's normal. And how to, instead of just shutting all that down, shutting down conversations about menopause, andropause, about changing physiological needs, etc., and actually plan for it and go, okay, so this part of our workforce is going to be, if they stay, we'll be going through this life transition. And how do we create opportunities there and make the most of it? Yeah,
I love that. I think that adds a new dimension to succession planning, even like for first level, second level managers before moving up, as you're getting into your 40s pretty soon. How are you planning to let go of the expertise and knowledge that you had before? Who can you trust around you that knows these things better than you?
Yes.
And do you need to hire people that know things better than you? Because I've noticed that you've been hiring people that don't.
That's a hugely scary question for somebody to... I'm getting shivers thinking about it myself.
It is hard.
I don't know. But workplaces have, on the whole, at least in most Western organizations, we've been able to adapt for maternity leave and parental leave. We've been able to look at our workforce and go, okay, we've got a bunch of people in their early 30s. They're going to be having children. They're going to need parental leave. We're going to have to make space for that. We're going to need to have policies and et cetera that support. We have laws around, there's government-supported maternity leave, so you can't sack people for that. And so people have adapted, organisations have adapted, and now it's seen as a real positive that you've got a strong parental leave policy, just as you've got maybe a strong work-from-home policy. We all had to adapt to those incredibly quickly, and it's seen as attractive. So if you don't have a good work-from-home policy, it's a strike against you for younger workers, etc. So I think it's interesting when you're trying to retain, like leadership is such a hard thing for people to develop. Leadership is hard. It's hard because it's not a doing in the way, as you say, it's not a KPI-driven thing. It's a people-driven thing. And it really does require a lot of change. And I think it'd be really interesting for organisations to start talking about how you're dealing with people getting older, not in terms of retirement plans, but transitioning into other opportunities. And if that was made clear to people out front, I think we just solved a whole lot of problems here. But if that was made clear in your recruitment, that instead of you having to change jobs to progress, that actually we are thinking about people as a whole through the whole of life. And we're encouraging people to stay if they're good. And they're open to this. So, yeah, I think that would be a really interesting conversation for some HR directors to get around.
It's fascinating. When I noticed in my research, I noticed that there's virtually no leadership development programs that make a distinction in age like this. It's all just a blur from early 30s up until retirement. And then in the research, looking at leadership models that I respect a lot and use myself, like Jim Collins, Good to Great, Michael Keegan, they speak of different levels of leadership. Jim Collins, it's level 5 leadership, which is humility and iron will. Michael Keegan talks about the self-transforming mind. And Michael Keegan says maybe 1% of people reach that. And Jim Collins says, I'm not sure if you can develop that level 5 leadership or if it's just innate. And when I did some research, I saw that most of these models were developed by people when they were in their 30s. They've gone on and grown beyond that, but a lot of that has its source at that time before they've even experienced midlife themselves. And so that really was an aha moment for me, that midlife has not been looked at with a forensic lens in terms of what are the amazing benefits from a leadership perspective that emerged during that time period, and how do we accelerate that emergence as opposed to hindering it. That's why I call it the last. I don't call it. This was written by psychiatrists, psychologists. It's the last remaining frontier in adult development.
Yeah, she was my career coach when I started on this journey. And so I met her in my mid-40s. And she said that working past 50 is like it's a road without maps, because definitely past 60, because we haven't done it before, because we did retire and die. So she said having this 20 odd years or so past 60 where you still want to be productive, you still want to be doing things, you've got to make it up, because there isn't necessarily a lot of standard corporate organisation type of pathways for this. And what we perhaps have are not terribly enticing, or people do leave the corporate ship because, one, you can access the super, but also it's like maybe the values of that corporate organisation no longer appeal to you either. So I think that's also part of it. How can organisations create compelling reasons to work there that are more than a pay packet? Yeah, and that's a big transition as well. But I think with great organising, yeah.
It's going to have to come fast with people aging and the social security, the retirement systems around the world are not really robust enough to cover such a huge mass of people that are unproductive beyond 65.
Yeah.
So it's going to have to, it's a natural progression that we'll live longer, we'll be productive longer. Let's understand better how that all works and what the benefits are and the new value that we bring to the world.
If people can make the transition through that, it's not necessarily... how do people get supported through that transition? I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, this has been an enlightening chat. He's got
it's
lots
been
to
fun.
think
It's
about.
fun.
Yeah, I do leadership training. I do leadership work as a public service, but I also do stuff with people with disability, do a lot with women, obviously. So the journeys might be quite different with the different access needs and different life paths and things as well. And I think there's also in that quest, I think there's another conversation to have about that diversity, that maybe the people who had been in the leadership roles are not always the ones that are going to be most open to transitioning, because they may not have had to. Maybe people who have had a less traditional pathway have got more adaptability built in, or more flexibility because they've had to develop it. And so how do we provide pathways for that knowledge to come in as well? I think that's another good conversation for the executive retreat we may need at some point. Okay. Yeah. Oh, it's been fantastic to talk to you. What's your final word for our people out here? If they're in that stage of thinking, all right, things are changing. I know things are changing. I'm either becoming more frustrated with myself, or I just notice that I'm not doing things in the same way, or things become harder. What would you tell them to do? What would be your advice?
I like reframing the idea of resilience, because resilience, it has some hardness to it.
Yeah.
That I'm bouncing back from something bad that's happened. I need to steel myself. So I like to see that more as embracing a sense of joyful transformation, laughing more, finding more pleasure. I think that's a really key aspect of going through all of this. Finding more joy in it than the resilience side of it.
Oh, okay.
And that ironically makes us more resilient because we're able to laugh through things easier.
Yeah, as well. Yeah, find the funny side. There always is one. and also that kindness to yourself in there. So what's next for you? You've got books out, you've got various resources available. We'll link to everything in our show notes, obviously. But yeah, what's next for you, Aneace?
This whole aspect of midlife is so rich. There's a lot to create in that space. Top team retreats that really leverage fully this angle. Retreats for individuals in the US. There's something called the Modern Elders Academy by Chip Conley, who is one of the Airbnb. He was actually hired by the 3 Airbnb founders as someone to bring more a mature point of view to the team.
Wow.
And he went on to create this Modern Elders Academy. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity and richness in all of that space.
Yeah.
And right now, my angle is C-suite transformation. Through that, we'll see where it goes to beyond that.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's an awesome and fantastic mission for yourself, obviously. It's keeping you motivated, engaged, joyful, and enjoying life. It's a good thing. So thank you for sharing all of your life journey and the insights that you have. And please check out Aneace's writings. As I said, he has one book published. It's a modern fable, and then there's another one on the way.
Yeah. The Eagle That Drank Hummingbird Nectar was a novel, but it's a leadership novel. It's also on midlife. And the new book, Soaring Beyond Midlife, it's available now on Amazon in pre-order. And that one really covers everything we've been talking about today.
Great. Get on that if you're interested in it, because pre-orders really help drive sales on Amazon in these days of algorithms. I've learned that one, not through my own publishing, but just following a various range of people. Okay.
That's very true. Very true.
Like learning how to transform the algorithm is a skill maybe I don't have. All right. So take care, and take care to the audience and everyone who's been listening to us today. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to seeing you next week. So take care of your work-life balance, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Don't miss a single episode, so subscribe to Aligned and Thriving now to unlock a world of inspiration and practical strategies. And if you have subscribed, why not check out our IG account or join our community to navigate your own way to a happier and healthier working life?